In this video, you will be learning about cultural bias, which includes ethnocentrism and cultural relativism. This is a spec for AQA Psychology A-Level on what you need to know about cultural bias, and we have highlighted the important bits.
So, I'm sure you may ask yourself, why is this important? But here, I'm going to use this helpful little example to try and make things a little bit more understandable. Take this bowl of rice. There are multiple methods of eating it. However, if you're from a Western culture, you'll probably find it odd to see somebody eating that rice with their hands, or maybe even with chopsticks, as you may believe that the proper way to eat food is with a fork. So by this information being generalised to Western cultures, it could mean that some Westerners could have a negative outlook towards those eating rice in other ways. So say if they went to somebody's house and saw somebody eating their rice with their hands, they may think of them as being inferior. Whereas there's places such as India where this is very normal within cultures. And some may find it odd that one may use chopsticks, whereas there's places such as Japan where this is completely normal and they might find it odd to see somebody doing elsewise. And here we have America, where the preferred way of eating rice and expected way would be a fork. Hence why it can be harmful to share this outlook with the rest of the world, because it could lead on a negative view on other people and possibly put them at risk of suffering prejudice or hate. Take a moment now to look at some of the definitions on the right-hand side of the screen. You'll need to do this throughout this video. Feel free to take some notes as well. These are the key definitions needed before we go on to universality and bias. So, universality is the conclusion that conclusions can be applied to everyone, anywhere, regardless of time period or culture. Bias is the inclination or prejudice for or against one person or group, especially in a way which is considered to be unfair. Universality and bias is the ideas that findings from research can't be generalised to the world population, as it is based on a small sample group who have been brought up in the same culture. These studies have not taken into account that culture can change the outcome of their studies. For example, let's take this group here. They represent the West, where a study has taken place which says all humans wear clothes, more specifically, clothes that consist of trousers and a top. They've decided to generalise this information to the rest of the world. But here we have another culture. Instead, they choose to wear colourful morph suits. So, this means this Western culture over here thinks that this culture is inferior.
Cultural relativism is the idea that the norms and values, as well as ethics and moral standards, can only be meaningful and understood within a specific social and cultural context. John Berry, 1969, draws a distinction between the etic and the emic approaches to the study of human behaviour. The etic looks at behaviour from outside a given culture and attempts to describe the behaviours that are universal. Emic is the functions from within or inside certain cultures and identifies the behaviours specific to that culture.
Now we will look into ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism refers to a particular form of cultural bias and is a belief in the superiority of one's own cultural groups. Within ethnocentrism, when other cultures are observed to differ from the researcher's own, they may be regarded in a negative light. For For example, degenerate, unsophisticated, or underdeveloped. An example of ethnocentrism is Ainsworth's strange situation. This is because her findings were not generalisable to other cultures, so it was criticised because it only reflects the norms and values of American culture. Her findings of attachment led to misinterpretation of child-rearing practices in other countries, which were seen to deviate from the American norm. For example, German mothers were seen as cold and rejecting rather than encouraging independence in their children.